they talk.
Social media has gone from something that connected us to people around the world who shared our interests to an instrument for change. Corporations are using social media not just to sell their product, but to solidify their identity to customers. People are using social media to start companies, and themselves, activists, are able to use social media to mobilize tens of thousands of people within seconds on a single issue. Politicians have obsessed over Twitter this election in a way that a few years ago would have been relegated to teenagers. And those who are shaping the conversation and trajectory of social media are marketers, especially millennial marketers, while baby boomers are trying to put the brakes on the internet and control the context in which the conversation is allowed to happen. Millennials are looking into the future and opening the road to a new way of communicating. So while you are being sold to from every angle on what to wear, how to look, what to believe, and even who to vote for, you can't forget to start watching the Hawks.
If you want to know what's going on in your city, in your streets, never back down like Tyrell, and the truth is what you seek. To analyze, investigate from the bottom to the top. You speak your mind like Sean Stone, whether they like it or not. I got Tabitha Wallace with the wisdom and the pearl. Between the outrage and the evidence, what's going on in this world? Watching the Hawks, watching the Hawks, watching the Hawks. Listen when they talk.
Welcome to Watching the Hawks. I am Tabitha Wallace. Shama Hyder is an author, entrepreneur, international keynote speaker, and a web and television personality. She's the founder and CEO of Marketing Zen Group, and her book, Momentum, looks at the changing face of branding and the digital age. We started by asking her what made her approach to social media different from the traditional marketing we've all grown up with. Let's take a listen.
Well, I think I got a very early start in the world of social media. I did my thesis on Twitter when it had about 2,000 users. Hence my Twitter handle is @Shama. And people say, how did you get that handle? I'm like, well, you just have to be the first couple thousand users, and you too can have your first name on there. And so I think being early in the social media game certainly helps. And just having seen how it's evolved over the years has been a fascinating experience. And for me, it's all about Zen. My first book is called The Zen of Social Media Marketing. My company is called Marketing Zen. And to me, it's more than just a word. It's this philosophy that if you go with the flow of social media, if you understand how these tools are meant to be used, then you're going to be a lot more successful as a marketer, a business person. And let's face it, we're all sort of marketers these days.
Well, especially branding. Like, there's all this idea of personal branding. How is your approach to marketing and social media unique? How does it give an edge over other people? Because what we're seeing now is it isn't just about selling clothes, it isn't just about selling soda, it's about selling people, and part of that, it sort of gets into politics. So how is your approach unique than what we see everywhere else?
Well, I think what's really important is understanding that it's not about what your brand says about you. The longest times, companies did this. Mad Men era is like the perfect example, right? Like, what does our brand say about us? And this is really much more the focus on what does doing business with us at any level, right? Communicating with us, interacting with us, allow our customers to say about their brand. And so it's a very different perspective. So it's like, you know, even the people watching the show right now, it's, yes, this show might be about XYZ, but what does it say about them watching the show? Right? They like to stay in touch with current affairs. They like the perspective. You know, they're avant-garde in some ways.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah.
When you look at the businesses of the United States or of the world, how would you say they're using social media correctly or incorrectly?
Yeah, I think so much of this is a process, right? Is that, I mean, this is true for every one of us. At my office, the joke's always like, what changed while we were sleeping? Because that's the only guarantee is something changed. We just need to figure out by noon what it is so we can make sure that our clients are in the loop. And I think so part of this is an evolution. It's not so cut and dry. It's not like you get up and you realize, okay, well, this is how it's gonna be. It's more learning to realize that this is an ecosystem. It's not about the tools we use. People get so caught up in that. Like, is it Snapchat? Is it Instagram? And really, it's sort of this broader idea of it's this ecosystem, and so how do you really thrive in it?
You know, it's interesting, as someone who clearly studies social media, clearly studies marketing, clearly an expert in these things, you know, we've covered the election front to back, on this show, and that's kind of the talk of the town everywhere you go.
No kidding.
Yeah, now when you look at the election through your eyes, what do you see? What kind of marketing strategies are you seeing being deployed by everybody, by both sides? Like, what do you see when you look at this election?
Yeah, it's amazing. This election has just been a case study in marketing and PR and social media. I mean, digital is really going to be what decides the election for us in so many ways. And I think what's fascinating is it's not just about this is our campaign, this is where we're going to push the message down, but it's also so much more about being responsive to what people are saying, right? And so if something gets, things get trending all the time on Twitter. So for the campaigns, it's about being able to pivot and being agile. So it's the same thing as a client of ours, what we might tell them, we tell anybody running right now, all the candidates, it's about how do you respond to what people are already talking about, right? And how do you do it in a smart way that helps further your cause?
Do you think, and during the midterms a couple of years ago, because I worked in digital marketing for years, that was my background, and one of the things I noticed about political campaigns is that the ones that seem to be very successful are the ones that kind of take the Apple approach, which is, it doesn't matter what the other guy's doing. I'm just going to talk about how awesome I am. Where some people kind of tend to use I'm going to tell you why all the other products aren't as good as us. Which do you think of those approaches actually works the best and resonates with people?
Yeah.
Is negative campaigning or just, I'm awesome?
Oh, I think it depends on your audience, right? I think it really depends because there's certain audiences that respond well to, well, tell me why not your competitors, or give me, you do my homework for me, compare and tell me what you think. And then there's folks who really do appreciate just tell me what's good. I don't really care. I can do my own homework.
Interesting. What do you see as the biggest negatives in the election? I mean, when you look at how the politicians are using social media today, what do you see as the worst examples of the wrong way to use social media or the wrong way social media is affecting campaigns?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it's just sometimes decorum and understanding that, when someone is tweeting at 3 a.m. or regardless of the candidate in question. So you just have to be careful because all those things get taken into consideration. So people aren't just looking at the message, they're looking at tone, they're looking at timing, and so context with social media is so important.
Is there a way to get around that? Because I feel like that's what we all struggle with in our daily lives is context and tone on social media. Is that, how do you think we'll learn to understand that better? I mean, we're talking emojis and lasers and things we can add to let everybody know, I'm just kidding, or whatever. Is that going to be what it takes, or?
Sarcasm never translates.
No.
It's hard to translate, for sure. Yeah, I think a lot of this is just layers, right? So we use emojis now. In fact, emojis are, 90% of texts that are sent in certain countries are pure emoji. Like in South Korea, that's the predominant, entire conversations happen in emoji format. So you have to stop and think about it. And I think we as a society are figuring out what are our rules. I mean, think about when email first came out. Think about the person who forwarded or replied all to every email. We probably still know people like that, right? But for the most part, I think people understand that reply all is not necessary. You're forwarding every email that comes to your inbox. So I think a lot of this is time and how we, as a society, not just learn to follow the rules, but we create those rules.
Interesting.
Interesting.
One of the things that we've noticed is sort of the historical context of where our marketing, our basis for how to market to people came out of a lot of World War II propaganda. How do we tell people you should be afraid of something or you're bad at something? I mean, talking about Mad Men, it's make someone feel bad about themselves and then tell them what they need to feel better about it. So there's been a lot of critique that says marketing can be used as a form of propaganda, or that propaganda and marketing are kind of the same. So is this a strategy you get when you buy, it's the strategy you get when you buy something that you might not otherwise want. Is there a more positive way to think about marketing? Because it's got a really, it's got a bad rap, but some of it's, there's a reason.
Yeah, I think marketing is also, it's necessary, right? Because, for example, let's say you're in a new city and you are looking for a doctor. Don't you want all the doctors to be out there to say, here's what we offer, and so it makes your choice easier? And so in a lot of ways, I think we think about marketing and it's a double-edged sword. There's a place and time for, hey, that's really useful, and no, that's spam. And so much of that is also context. So I think for marketing, it's really thinking about how can I be relevant? to my given audience, do things in a timely manner, right? Because what's spam today is relevant tomorrow, and vice versa. So timing is everything, and being able to cater given those constraints. And I think then marketing becomes useful. It's a necessary part of society. It's only, of course, all these tools and platforms can be used for positive and negative.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right? So,
I think this is the realm where I feel that politics or personal politics or sort of social justice kind of comes in when marketing. Is it good for a brand or bad for a brand when, you know, when Target stands up for equal rights, for gay rights or trans rights, when a certain company, when someone like Chick-fil-A kind of makes against? Do you think that politics and consumerism, is that hard for consumers to understand, or how do they actually respond to that kind of stuff when you get very political?
Right. So I think, you know, you have to realize businesses are also run by individuals at the end of the day. So business and politics have never been far apart. But I think you do have to look at your audience and understand your audience. And so in Chick-fil-A's case, right, as many people as opposed it, they seem to have a lot of people who favored Chick-fil-A standing up for what they believed in, now regardless of whether you think it's right or wrong. So I think divisiveness has always been a political strategy, and it's a marketing strategy as well.
And it works.
And it works, yeah.
Yeah,
done right, it works.
Right,
Let's
that's
say
true.
it that
That's
way.
true. Done right, it actually works.
So you know, let's peer into the future. I mean, we know the good and the bad. Actually, you know, before I get to that, I want to ask one thing: is how can, I mean, I think that right now we are inundated with marketing probably more than any kind of generation or generations in today's day and age. I mean, we're hit with marketing every time we turn on our computer, look outside our window, turn on the TV, it's there.
Right.
How does a consumer or someone on social media, whatever it may be, how can they kind of generally judge the difference when you're constantly being marketed to? You know, because now it's getting hard when you have news organizations, for example, will kind of embed marketing as a news story. You know, how
advertorials.
Yeah, you know, how is it on a consumer? You know, how hard is it, and what should they be looking for to better judge when I'm being marketed to, which has its place, and when I'm, you know, getting duped, and you know, like, and when I'm like, wait, that's not market, you know, that's real, you know.
Yeah. Well, so I think, you know, before it used to be sort of customer beware, right? And now I think because of the nature of the web and social, it's really business beware, because it's not that hard. I mean, social media is the ultimate amplifier. So it doesn't take long for someone who has a negative experience to use that as a platform and be able to share that. I think that being said, consumers do have to take the responsibility to educate themselves and know that you are seeking out sort of multiple, you know, resources to help make that decision. And you can't expect that someone else is going to make that decision for you, and it's going to be the right decision for you. So you certainly have to learn to do your homework and create sort of your own mental filters, if you will, to figure out, you know, what's really right for me.
It's interesting. It's interesting. How do we see the future of marketing and social media going? That's the big question now. We're stepping in. We're very close to 2020. You know, the world changed overnight, you know, in 2000. Like, technology is driving us. The thirst for information drives us. Where do you see, and you look at, like, how millennials are using, you know, technology and social media. What are the new frontiers? Where do you see us going? What do you think the next step's going to be?
Yeah, so I really think, you know, the future is a lot more integrated, right? So even today, technology feels a little disjointed, like you've got this app over here, and then you have to switch over to this. And I think as we move forward, it'll really become so much more seamless. Add to that augmented reality, wearables, and I think we won't think about digital and traditional separately, be one and the same. It's like, you know, someone said the other day, a client of mine, his daughter said, "Dad, why do you always say to hang up the phone?" Because she has no sense of, like, exactly. It's like, when you, like, why don't you just say disconnect, or like end? Why do you say? And so I think, you know, even sort of the digital traditional, those lines, it'll become a misnomer.
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about that.
That's a great point.
Because if you don't actually remember having to hang up a phone, it's very strange.
Well, I still used to have to turn the dial.
I don't think they know how to do that.
No, they're vintage.
Yes.
They're lovely and vintage. Speaking on millennials, because we're looking at a time now where millennials make up a very large portion of the voting population. They are a very large portion of the workforce. And they're about to inherit a lot of money from middle age and older brackets, because those are the people that are holding on to that wealth right now. how do we use young people's technology, this idea of all these digital technology, to maybe either appeal to those older age brackets to kind of get them on board? Because it seems this fight right now is really against old and young, the future versus what they want the future to be, even though they're not going to be here for it. So how do we utilize this to bring these two sides together?
So I think in history, right, if you look at it, you've had this sort of generational sort of tug of war at every level. I think it feels more amplified now because it's playing out on a stage where we can all see, where it's not so much undercurrents, but it's what you see. I think the other sort of misconception is that older people don't use social tools and it's just a younger people thing. What I think is really interesting is how older generations use social media versus younger generations. So millennials and stuff, what you'll find is they'll interact more, right? So they will Snapchat and comment and like, so you know that they're out there. With what you find with Gen X, baby boomers, even the silent generation, is that they're consuming the information, but they may not be interacting with that information, but that you can't discount that they're not part of that ecosystem, if that makes sense. So I think that's a very interesting dichotomy.
Well, it's interesting, and it's always interesting having you on, and thank you so much, Shama Hyder, for coming on and talking with us about this. The book is Momentum. Definitely check it out, and for all of your, thoughts and ideas about social media and where it could go, I think you have a lot of really good ideas in there and a lot of, very interesting viewpoint on it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you.